Shana Tova. I got to spend some time with the Jewish community in Italy this summer, specifically in Rome. I found the Roman Jewish community to be as warm as they are tough. We spent time in the Jewish quarter, which was filled with delicious food, Israeli music, Israeli flags, images of hostages, no security, by the way, just wide open. The Roman Jewish community has lived through it all. It's one of the oldest diasporas in the world. It began when Jerusalem was under Roman rule during the days of the Roman Empire. While we were there, we of course went to see the great Roman Colosseum where gladiators sparred, which was built by, they say, 30,000 Jewish slaves. We saw the great crest on the Arch of Titus, which proudly depicts the stealing of a giant golden menorah from the temple in Jerusalem when the Romans sacked our sacred city. And that was just the beginning of the Roman persecution of the Jewish people. Since then, Jews in Rome were forced to wear identifying clothing centuries before the Shoah. Jews in Rome were banned from certain professions on the one hand and target of random taxes on the other. They faced multiple blood libels, the lie that Jews are needlessly violent, cruel, criminal, and bloodthirsty, particularly for the blood of children. They were under immense pressure to convert, and they were forced to live in a ghetto in terrible conditions with constant flooding from the Tiber River. After all of that, the centuries of cruelty and persecution, the Jews of Rome were finally permitted to build a synagogue. And you know what they did? They painted the walls of the synagogue red and gold, the colors of the city of Rome. The city that spurned them, discriminated against them, persecuted them. They chose to honor it. What do you make of that choice? What does it say specifically about the Jews of Rome? But more than that, what does it say about the Jew in the city? What does it say about us? Is the fact that the Roman Jews painted their synagogues the color of the city of Rome the ultimate sign of Jewish self-loathing? Were they suffering from some sort of Stockholm syndrome, unable to see the folly of their captors? Were they weak and desperate, begging to be accepted, willing to do anything to fit in, even compromising their sacred space simply to show they were part of society? Were they the ultimate sign of Jewish weakness, unable to stand up for themselves? Or, as a resident of another great city, this great city, do you kind of understand what they did? Do you feel what they might have felt? Not just a love and a loyalty to the city, but an ownership of the city. They were not guests in Rome. It was their city, so of course they loved it. They loved it even when it turned on them. The question feels timely because at moments over this past year, it's felt like the city is sometimes slipping away from us. Have you had moments where you felt like that? As if the city itself is turning in a darker, more distant direction from the Jewish community? Maybe it was when in Midtown, a festival celebrating high culture invited an influencer who justified the massacre of October 7th to speak. Maybe it was when Uptown, a university, turns itself into a denizen of anti-Jewish energy. Or maybe it was downtown on one of the many Shabbats where I watched some of our older, beloved congregants arrive at synagogue flustered after having to walk through an intimidating anti-Israel march just to come to services. What does it mean to be a Jew in the city right now? We are currently sitting in the Jewish American diaspora, which is arguably the greatest Jewish diaspora ever. I think it is. And in that diaspora, we are sitting in the greatest city. And in that city, if you were to build a synagogue anywhere, you would build it where the village temple is, downtown, in the center of everything. So what does it mean to live here, right now, where the tides of culture and politics seem to be drifting away from us? Because the world is watching. We in this room are the test case, not just for New York, but for everywhere. For the United States, for global Jewry. How will the Jews of New York respond? In a city where it virtually rains bagels, how are we honestly going to navigate the shifting landscape? So without judgment, I want to describe for you 3 models for how Jews have lived and how we could live in the diaspora. Option 1. I'm walking onto the train to come downtown like I always do. I see a woman in a Bring Them Home necklace with a layered, shorter Jewish star necklace above it. I give her the nod. Hey, as I always do. I see you. I'm with you. And she sees me and touches her heart, and she mouths the words, "Thank you." And she goes through the turnstile in front of me, and in one natural movement, as if she'd done it 100 times before, she tucks her necklaces into her shirt. This is the first model of how to be a Jew in the diaspora. Hide. There's a cluster of ideas and ways to do this. There are ideas like passing, assimilating, outward, but also maybe inwardly. Before we judge, there is an ample amount of support in Jewish tradition for this approach. Pikuach nefesh is the Jewish obligation not just to save a life, but also to save your own life. Judaism considers it a mitzvah, an obligation to desecrate Shabbat in order to save a life. And so this approach of allowing Judaism to exist within us, if we feel unsafe, has ample textual support. Hiding sometimes works, and hiding sometimes leads to safety. And there are all types of ways we can hide. We can laugh at the not really funny Jewish joke and pretend we're in on it. We can choose not to look different, not to think differently, not to eat differently. We can opt to not really have any beliefs that differ from mainstream ideas. We can choose not to cause trouble, not to go against the grain. This first strategy relies on ingratiating ourselves to the mainstream population to prove that we are excellent, and we are. We can prove ourselves by contributing to society, to get those degrees, to win those Nobel Prizes, to give our philanthropic dollars to secular institutions. We can fit in. We can blend. The positive frame to this approach is to say, we are doing everything we can to ensure our physical safety. The critique of this approach is that it's sort of a self-erasure, or even at its extreme, a self-loathing. For many of us, these are not even our choices. They were choices that our parents or grandparents or great-grandparents made for us. They changed their names. They changed their kitchens and their languages. And this choice, option 1 for how to be a Jew in the diaspora, is a survival strategy that's worked in millions of cases. But know that if broadly hiding our Jewishness is the primary strategy we take, the risk of this strategy of hiding is that it is a precursor to leaving. And we know what it feels like to leave. Even if we feel like we don't, even if the idea itself horrifies us, the memories are still there. The objects we've seen from the old country, the accents we heard, the history we learned. Jews leave. We know from the Lower East Side, we were there, now just a few blocks over. We can look through that neighborhood and see synagogues that are now Chinese laundromats. We know about leaving when we walk on the cobblestones of the streets of any European city with the names of our relatives inscribed underfoot. We know when we hear Alex's accent. Leaving is always in the background of being a Jew, and it starts with hiding. Because hiding, tucking that necklace into our shirts, is kind of a spiritual exit. It's an acquiescence to a scary external reality that says, I'm willing not to be here if you can't tolerate me. So that's choice one. It's Rosh Hashanah, a new year. How much do you want to exist at that end of the spectrum? Do you want your coworkers to know you're Jewish? If you wear a kippah in synagogue, do you want to wear it on the street? What is that elusive balance for you between physical safety and spiritual danger? Option two. I know it's Rosh Hashanah, but I need to start with Purim. It's no secret, but maybe it's a little secret, that won't be one anymore, which is it's possible that Purim is not my favorite holiday. I don't like masks and costumes. I like people. I like faces. And Purim is a holiday without God. Not once does God appear in the book of Esther. So it doesn't really speak to me. But this year, Purim hit differently. Because Purim is about a Jew who refuses to bow down. Purim is about Mordecai, who looks up at the authority of his day and says, "No, I will not bend the knee to your false gods. Even if you bully me, even if you put the weight of the government against me, even if you accrue masses to testify against me, even if you threaten me with my life, I will not compromise my Jewishness for your false beliefs." Option two for how to be a Jew in the diaspora is Jewish pride, self-respect, and even playing some offense. This past year, I got to speak to the Hasidic rapper Matisyahu. Maybe some of you know his music. It's great. He talked about his origin story, which was right here in downtown Manhattan. When he was first becoming religious, he used to pray on the roof of the new school. He had his breakout performance at Bowery Bar. I told him I was the rabbi of the village temple, and he knew our community. In a lot of ways, he felt like one of us. And we were talking about his touring post-October 7th, and he said he literally watched the protest movement grow before his eyes as he toured. Matisyahu is not an Israeli. He's never served in the IDF. In fact, he was born and raised in Westchester. Nonetheless, he was boycotted against and protested. When he started to notice at his concerts, there would be about 12 protesters. But at each show, this movement got bigger and bigger and bigger, to the point where he drove 500 miles with his crew only to arrive at a venue and find out that his show had been canceled. But the fans and his crew had made such a great effort for him that even though he is a massive touring artist, he shifted gears and found a local bar to perform in. And he said to me, "Nothing will stop us. We are playing this show." That's the second option for how to live as a Jew in the diaspora. Nothing will stop us. We're playing this show. And this right here is our show. We are lighting our candles, eating our challah. We are blowing a ram's horn. We are praying these ancient prayers. We are holding our head up high. In an age of Jewish shame, we are sending our children to school as proud Jews, Jewish stars out. In the face of shiny new technology, we are clinging to the ancient words of our tradition. As our culture pressures us to participate in sameness, we dare to be different. Judaism is built on the spirit of defiance. It's an ancient, countercultural, anti-tyrannical movement. Those who demand uniformity and obedience will never be our true friends. Option two is to remember that this year, we are the instruments in God's band. And one way to exist in the diaspora this year is to play our show and our music our way. Nothing can stop us. Jews have always been good at learning from other communities. From the LGBTQ plus community, we've learned a great deal about allyship and self-advocacy. From our amazing interfaith families, we've learned a great deal about inclusivity and cross-cultural communication. And if I may, for those who are interested in pursuing option two, I think we could learn from our African American community at this moment. Their model for living in America has largely been focused on pride and self-respect. We hear phrases like black girl magic, black excellence, and because they refuse to hide, and in many ways, because of appearance and other issues, do not have the option to hide, they have become the trailblazers of culture. Often, it's the African American community who sets the tone, and we follow. Maybe we can learn a bit about living a loud life and a proud life of self-respect from them. But be warned, if we follow this strategy, it can lead to danger. After all, this is not the first time New York has become rough for the Jews. In 1968, the Jewish community was deeply politically divided, as it is becoming now. There was a powerful youth movement gaining energy. You can see pictures of young Jewish communists marching down Fifth Avenue. And in that time, in the span of only 3 months, 11 Jewish institutions in New York were vandalized, set on fire, or firebombed. And when that was happening, the Option 1 Jews chose to leave the city. They fanned out into the suburbs, and they built a flourishing Jewish community there. But the Option 2 Jews chose to stay. They decided it was better to plant seeds than light a fire. Which are you? Which should we be as the Jewish world looks to us for leadership? From my French friends, I get WhatsApp messages. They say, is it like there what it was like for us during the Second Intifada? From my Israeli friends, I get messages that say, what are you waiting for? Get on a plane. And from my Kishkis, I get, stay here. Stand strong and show the rest of the Jewish world how it's done. I said no judgment, and I mean it. But for me, I'm an Option 2 Jew. I always have been. I can't help it. But it doesn't mean you have to be. For me, I think of Psalm 121, Esa Einai. I look up to the mountains. From where does my help come? It's an image that tells us to literally hold our head up high, and help will come from above. In truth, most of us are a messy combination of both choices. So much is changing, and so quickly it's hard to get our footing and feel like we are standing on solid ground. We are confused and unsure. So I want to share a third way of being. Image 1 is hide the necklace. Image 2 is hold your head up high like Mordecai. And image 3 happened one day when I was walking from our synagogue to visit a congregant one Friday before Shabbat. There was a protest with drums and very aggressive signs and a palpable, almost intimidating energy. And on the side of this protest, filled with hundreds of young people, was a skinny boy, man, maybe 20 years old, leaning against some scaffolding, wearing a Bring Them Home necklace, just watching, despondent. And so I just went and I stood next to him. For minutes, we stood next to each other as strangers in silence, but still connected. We said nothing. We just stood there and processed together. The third way to be a Jew in the diaspora this year is to sometimes be an outcast, stand on the side of culture, not in the mainstream, but to stand there together with care and kindness for each other, to be with each other in the happiest moments and also the most divisive ones, to say, I'm here with you, no matter what. And the beauty of it is to care. You don't have to agree. We can be there for each other because that's the top of the pyramid of being a Jew in any place in the world. Olam chesed yibane. Through kindness, the world will be rebuilt. There is a lot of Jew versus Jew energy in the atmosphere these days. I don't know how much of it is authentic and how much of it is constructed, but whatever the case, the most important thing is people. It's panim al panim, face to face. Just like Moses sat with God face to face, this is the most powerful way to be a Jew in the diaspora, to stand near each other and with each other. If we do, we will figure this out. Option 3 is to have that hope together, and that together we will walk forward. In Jewish life, hope is not a passive wish, but an active stance. The very word hope, tikva, comes from a root that means to bind or to draw together. To have hope is to tie ourselves to the future of God's promises, even when the present feels uncertain. For generations, Jews carried this hope through exile and loss, holding fast to the belief that light could break through the darkness. This is why Hatikva, the hope, became our people's anthem, because Jewish hope is stubborn, resilient, and creative, just like we are. And because we know we have not achieved all we desire, but we have hope that the world will get better. Hope is not a naivete. It is faith that God's presence dwells even here, and that by standing with each other and cultivating a culture of support, positivity, compassion, and understanding, we can make the world better for ourselves and for all people. That's the third choice for how to be a Jew in the diaspora. Stand together, witness the pain together, and choose to have radical, rabid, unrelenting hope for a better future. When I walk into the lobby of my children's school, there is a huge piece of art. It's a map with arrows all over the place, depicting where Jews have moved. What is the place of the Jew in America? Is this a blip, and when the war ends, the anti-Semitism will go away? I don't know. But I do know that all Jewish diasporas end eventually. The arc of history, with its rises and falls, is bigger than us. Egypt, where we had our darkest days, ended with a miracle, a liberation, with freedom and a journey. Spain, where we wrote poetry, dabbled in astrology, and for a time lived in harmony with Muslims and Christians, ended with an expulsion. In Germany, where the Jews were affluent and influential, it ended in the worst way. Is America different? Today, I choose option 3. I think it is. I hope it is. I believe it is. I recently heard the phrase, when memories exceed dreams, the end is near. I don't want to remember the great Jewish diaspora of New York City. I want to build it. And I have great news. I know exactly how. I am looking at the answer right now. It's all of you. It's everything in this room. Together, we will take one step and the next and the next. We will be the builders. We will create a vibrancy and a newness. We will laugh with our children and sit beside our elders. We will continue our traditions and plant new seeds of Jewishness all over the streets of this, our sacred city. May the Jews of New York flower and blossom this new year. Together, I believe we can. Shana Tova.